Greetings, everyone. My name is Magmatic Sage, and welcome to another installment of the Magmatic Chambers. Here, I get to interview Earth and geoscientists talking about their field of specializations, some of their works, and of course, something interesting about their lives. To start off, I welcome Jayson Pinza. Thank you for joining me today. Could you give a brief introduction about yourself and the stuff you do? And of course, what aspect of Earth scientists you are passionate about?
Hi, thank you for inviting me here. It will be a nice experience to talk about what I'm doing. So again, I'm Jason, and I'm I'm focusing on hydrogeology and groundwater related studies. So anything related to water resources, freshwater resources, specifically groundwater, or the water that you do not see, it's just underneath us, but it's still important in our daily life. It's something that you pump out of the wells, and it's something that also supplies life because these things, they also drain to your rivers. So even during dry periods, you'll see that there are still rivers, and that's because of the groundwater. So this is the main thing that I study, and today, and for my PhD, my main focus is on improving its water availability, groundwater availability, specifically in rural areas. And how do we improve that? We want to study what we call nature-based solutions, or these measures that harness the power of nature, so we would be able to improve the water availability in these areas.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, what are these nature based solutions that you're talking about? Could you give us an example?
There are so many types of nature-based solutions, and in fact, its definition, or like criteria to say that something is nature-based, is actually vague. In fact, I cannot even say if this is really nature-based solution or not, because some practices of the cult, like the ancient people or the people who are isolated, they have their own ways to harness nature. Sometimes they're not considered nature-based solutions. So it's not really clear on the criteria of what a nature-based solution is. But in my case, nature-based solutions are any form of any technique or any form of using nature. For example, in my PhD, I I study what you call the ditches where you try to drain away the water from the farms. Because when these farmers have excess water, they try to drain it away using ditches. But that would mean that these waters are gone. During dry periods, then there will be less water in these areas. But now, if we want to close these ditches, we want to close it with gates that we call weirs, then maybe we can retain some of the water and try and make it infiltrate deeper down the ground. So at least we can try to improve the water availability in these areas. So these are mostly natural solutions. Well, not exactly natural, but it's managed natural solution that allows us to make use of nature. We don't use hardcore engineering measures. We do not use high tech things. We just make use of nature. So that will be able to improve the water availability. But there are more nature based solutions. Some improve the water quality, like removing the pollutants. That's not my focus of my PhD, but there are more than that. And I think in the Philippines we also have these mangroves. Sometimes they're also considered nature-based solutions, but sometimes, yeah, that's what I know. They're also considered nature-based solutions because they try to hold the ground so that it doesn't erode.
Well, that's quite interesting. So, what are the climatic limitation of using this ditches as a natural based solution for water what do they call that? Resource management or something? Yeah.
Yes, water resource management. Ah, that's a nice question. For instance, if you have a very wet area, like if you have high rainfall, like consecutively high rainfall events, then maybe these ditches can be overwhelmed. So that's why we need to do some models as well to be able to see if this is really feasible, if this will really increase the water availability or not. Or some other models can also be used to see if these measures can be overwhelmed because you have so much water. It's also not good as well. So there are also some, as you said, limitations to these measures.
It's so what I'm understanding right now is that ditches isn't really that well applicable in a tropical environment, right? Because of oversaturation or something.
Well, we have to be careful also about the term tropical because it's also pertaining to the countries in Africa, not just like Philippines where it's wet, tropical maritime. So there's also the tropical dry countries like in Africa. So yeah, with this, if you said
What's the correct term for a more like tropical but more humid?
Philippines, humid tropical rainforest. Sometimes they call it tropical rainforest. Sometimes, yeah, tropical humid is also okay. Sometimes they call it tropical rainforest, but it's not always. There's not always forest. Sometimes there's also just grass. So maybe just call it tropical humid or tropical maritime in the case of Philippines because the Philippines is surrounded by the ocean and the seas, so it's also okay. Just to see that there's the humid component as well.
Oh, okay. It's really interesting to see the dynamics of the hydrogeology of these tropical maritime countries, right? Because despite I've heard that despite having so much precipitation in these countries, they are having problems in relation to water resource management because they try to utilize a lot of groundwater, but exceeds the amount of water recharge of that particular area. So my question is that how would you, at least in these countries which is where rain is probably abundant, how would you manage to make these groundwater recharge much faster, I guess? Or I guess, is it really, could you really accelerate the groundwater recharge of an area faster? Or it's much more on the water management of the usage of the people?
That's a good question. Yeah, it's a very relevant topic, especially in the context of the tropical maritime countries like Philippines, because it's not much studied. This thing that you're pertaining to about managing the recharge. It's what you call in hydrogeology. It's what we call managed aquifer recharge, or sometimes they call it artificial recharge. But I am not really a fan, and it's not. We don't recommend using the term artificial because you're not making something, you're not building water, and you're just trying to manage the allocation of water. So that's why we call it managed aquifer recharge or simply MAR. So it's possible, even in Philippine setting. I think nowadays they are considering to do more, especially in urban areas, where they try to make the ground loose. Like we know that some are so impervious, but they want to put the soil back, something like that. You put the soil back or put a loose material such that the water can infiltrate from as rainfall, and it can infiltrate deeper down all the way to the aquifer. So they're also considering that as a measure, and it's also a way to at least try to hinder flooding as well, because when you try to infiltrate, then and this water will go deeper down rather than going across the road or something. So it's like hitting two birds in one stone, improving the water supply and at the same time mitigating or trying to prevent floods. So in the Philippines, it's still under study. I haven't heard much about it. I only hear some studies about trying to see the potential of certain areas for MAR, but there was no actual measure implemented yet.
So it's more on like trying to understand the science even further in this particular climatic setting. At the same time, partnering it or complementing it with policy making that supplements groundwater uh, resource management per se, right? So it's both technical and as well as social aspect.
Technic- Technical, yeah, water governance is as crucial as technical measures. I agree with you, and it's yeah. Sometimes we have this water crisis, like you said. Why do we still have water crisis even though we have so much rainfall in the Philippines? And sometimes it could be due to mismanagement of water. There are people who do illegal over extractions. They were not, these people are, it's hard to catch these people who do these illegal things. So sometimes these aquifers are stressed that it goes deeper, the water table or the level of the groundwater goes deeper, and so some other people are cannot access it anymore because there was an overpumping taking place. So it's really important to have some stringent measures like uh, like policy, strong policies that help catch these illegal activities, and at the same time regulate regulate these activities, not just trying to catch the illegal activities, but also even with the legal ones we have to regulate it. Yeah.
That's true. So let's move more on towards the research side of things. What do you think are the current challenges or limitations of a researcher in trying to research more about groundwater or at least research in general?
Well, one thing is you don't see the groundwater. It's as they say, groundwater is an invisible water resource. And as researchers, our goal is to make the invisible visible. And it's a challenge. Like how could you make something invisible visible? I mean, there are ways, of course, but you have to plan it. You have to pl- plan it in detail so that you'll be able to understand the dynamics of groundwater underneath. It's not easy because you cannot see it, but you have to understand the host rock, for example, or the soil where above the groundwater as well. And at the same time, another challenge is you also have to not only consider the technical aspect but also the social aspect, like the people who use it. So the anthropogenic, as they say, when you say anthropogenic, it's something man-made. So the man-made influences can also play a role in the groundwater dynamics. So it's something that a researcher has to consider as well. It's an interesting field, but at the same time it's challenging because you have to consider many factors: the geology, the soil. When you say geology, like the rock, the host rock, for example, even the they call geologic structures like faults or the cracks, where the cracks in the ground, it's also important in the hydrogeology as well. And another challenge is when you cannot simply estimate it because you cannot see it, right? It's not easy to measure things. So it's like you're blind in a way. You can do some techniques like what they call geophysical measures so that you have some idea or a snapshot of the underground, but it's not enough. Of course, a snapshot is just a snapshot, it's not the whole thing. Sometimes you also have to do modeling as well. Modeling is another challenge because you don't have all the data. It's not possible. I mean, it's nearly impossible to get all the data, like virtually all data that you need. As they say, all models are wrong, but some are useful. So, yeah, actually, I want to change it based on what I learned from the talks or webinars. We should say all models are approximations, but some approximations are useful.
Going back, actually, I've realized something that how do we, as scientists or geologists per se, how do we at least communicate to the people the importance of water resource management or the crucial information that people need to manage their water usage because groundwater is severely limited and it's very hard to again like manage it per se because well, previously we said that it's really it takes a long time to recharge such groundwater resource, or it really depends on the area, of course, and the parameters of the area. So how do we make people realize that they need to manage their water usage more efficiently and of course more considerately or something like that, right? So yeah, how do we communicate that? That's a very tough problem right now.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, I mean, if us hydrogeologists or researchers have a tough time understanding the groundwater, like the what's underneath, what more for the people. So it's indeed a challenge to communicate what we know. But for me, when you try to communicate something like this, you have to listen to the people actually. I think it's the opposite way. These people, they know there's a problem with groundwater. I mean, they just don't know it's what they call groundwater, but they're aware that there's something underground. They're aware because they have wells, for instance, or sometimes they get water from the rivers, from the surface waters like lakes, rivers, and so. So they have an idea about this water supply because we need it in their daily life. So it's not new to them. But what's new for them maybe is maybe the measures that you want to implement in a large scale. For example, like if you want to do some manage aquifer recharge, that is something new to them. Now, if you want to communicate communicate your science to them, you cannot communicate everything. No, you can't. You have to choose which one will you communicate, and that you would only know if you talk to people, if you listen to them. It's really important when you try to do science communication in general that you have to listen to these people, what they need to learn and what they want to hear from you. What is things that they want to learn. That's the thing that you want to address. So it's not just about groundwater. I think it's just science communication in general. That you just address what they want to know. I think that's very important. And of course, another thing is try to tone down your language. Like you cannot use technical terms, too technical terms, because they cannot understand it or they will lose their interest if you put too much jargon, for instance. So you have to tone it down in a way that they can understand.
Currently, right now, like science communication is in a tough position because there's so many things or so many advances in the science field. However, it's really hard to translate those knowledge for the common people, right? Because sometimes it's too technical to simplify such ideas, right? So that's where the problem arises. That how do you try to convey an information such complex in much simpler terms that so much people can understand it, right?
I think it's also the same answer as the question before. I think you have to listen to them. What do they want to know? Yeah, it's really important to listen to them. It's not always you have to give and give and give. No, you only give what they want to learn or what they want to know. Yeah, even a human mind has its own limits to learn something. It cannot overwhelm them with information. You have to select the best one that they want to know, and it's something that they can take advantage of. Some information that they can take advantage of, so that they could be able to do something about it.
So okay, let's take a step back and move away from the serious science jargon stuff. Let's talk more about your background per se. So, what's your history in trying to pursue the science of geology or even hydrogeology per se?
Oh, so it's a throwback of
Yeah.
what yeah, journey basically.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so it all started in my, I think it was grade school, around the sixth grade when my our family doctor said that at that time geologists are not that common in the Philippines, and he said that it's an interesting field or interesting profession that maybe I could take. So after 4 years, after going to a science high school, I mean these schools that specializes in science courses, I decided to pursue earth sciences, specifically, geology. And then when I entered my bachelor's or undergrad or college, I took geology, and then there I realized that, to be honest, geology is not really for me. Like the traditional geology, looking at the rocks, going to the field, always going outside, doing the mapping rocks. It's not something that I really like, to be honest, because I wanted something numerical. I wanted to deal with numbers. I wanted to do math. And geology, at least from where I came from, it doesn't involve much. In fact, they trying to avoid it as much as possible. So it's not really easy for me, although I finished it, of course. But I decided after graduating to pursue a field that has geology, but at the same time it has also mathematics. So there are some fields like geohazards. We have this also floods, like landslides, and so. But you also have groundwater, something that is not commonly studied, but it has math and it's related to geology, of course, because you have the rocks or soil that holds the water. So that field is the one I pursued. And when I took masters in the University of the Philippines, where it's like the premier university in the Philippines, I saw that there are not much specialists on groundwater. And then when I tried to apply for programs on hydrogeology or groundwater abroad, I was I was lucky enough to get accepted in this program in Europe, in Groundwater Global Change Program, or Groundwatch. That's where I my eyes became more open in the field of hydrogeology. So I really like it more, not just because there's math, not just because it's that that's just not just because it's math, but it's also because groundwater is an important resource in life for us people and even for ecosystems. So it's something that I felt relevant when I was here in Europe. So I decided to continue doing hydrogeological studies. And I'm really happy that I landed in this field. And I hope that I could contribute more when I go back to my country, or at least try to be involved in the research on limited research on hydrogeology in the Philippines.
So you mentioned earlier that your home country is the Philippines, right? So you're currently in Europe right now, and what are your culture shocks on staying or in your journeys in Europe? What are the what are the cultural differences and culture shocks you have encountered in Europe?
Culture shocks. Of the first thing is language. I mean, not everyone can speak English. And the countries where where I stayed, for example, Portugal, Netherlands, Germany, Belgium, these are countries that are whose official language is not English. So it's not easy always to communicate to people. Although some can understand English, but their English is not as smooth, or is not as they're not as fluent as us Filipinos in English. So that's one thing. I think that's the biggest maybe culture shock that you say. And then the other thing is, these people here in Europe, they are more into DIY. You mean do it yourself. Like, you don't have much people who will help you. For example, simple carrying of too many luggages, you don't expect people helping you. If someone help you, then chances are it could be not European. I don't want to be it's not being racist, but it's based on my observations. They're really into do it yourself, DIY. Even, for example, repairs at home, something that you have to do yourself. It's not something that you can ask for like a laborer, like hire a laborer and then let him fix it. So it's mostly DIY here, and maybe another culture shock moment here is the prices. Of course, it's a little bit more expensive in the countries where I've stayed, and when they serve food, for example, in restaurants or fast food, it's not much compared to where I come from, the Philippines. And what else? I think that's the main culture shock that I've seen. And then the rest is something that maybe I did consider shock, but I was just surprised, maybe. Yeah, but these are the things that surprised me the most.
I see. So, throughout your European journey, which culinary dish was your most memorable, or which European culinary dish is your favorite?
For me, it's the Italian one. It's the it's the most memorable one. So I tasted a real pizza, a real pasta, and I stayed in Italy for like a week for a workshop, and I didn't I I can eat pizzas and just pastas for 1 week. I don't get saturated with it. It's just like, oh, it's really fun eating with different flavors of Italian dish. For me, it's the most remarkable culinary dish that I've tasted here in Europe, at least.
Damn. Okay. So you heard it, folks. Italian dishes are worth to die for. Okay. Um. So let's move on to your hobbies. So, do you have any hobbies that you want to tell us, tell the viewers and the people, uh, what stuff do you do outside of your study zone or work per se, research work?
Yeah, maybe you could already consider mentoring as a hobby because in a way, I'm still contributing to mentorship of bachelor or undergraduate students in my university, University of the Philippines, in the Geological Institute there. I That's one hobby. Maybe you could consider it hobby because it's anything outside my research work. And another thing is when it comes to sports, I do swimming during my free time or when I'm stressed. Yeah, I mean, I'm not an athletic swimmer or like a professional swimmer. No, no, no. It's just like a real hobby for me to at least distress, and it's a way also for me to do exercise. It's my main exercise. And what else? Traveling in general, like going to other cities, trying their dishes, trying their beer, their native beer. It's also a hobby, and traveling is really nice. I don't get tired of it actually. Like I can travel to 4 consecutive days without getting tired because it's really fulfilling to see a new city and do some photography as well. So I also do some that I don't want to say a real photographer because I just use a cell phone camera, but I take shots. I try to do my best to take good shots and then try to filter it a little bit, edit it a little bit, and I share to people. So it's another hobby along with traveling. Of course, another hobby, of course, it's important. It's eating. I eat a lot of food. Sometimes I go to buffet for with myself, huh? Yeah, just with myself. I eat buffet with myself. It's really fulfilling because food is life.
So we got here not only a hydrogeologist but also a culinary reviewer per se,
Well, I'm not really as
food connoisseur.
but I'm not really strict into taste. I just want to eat. That's all. But I'm not really as specific for. Yeah, I'm not really specific for taste of food.
So I'm interested in knowing what is your most memorable college experience that you had in your undergraduate years, if it's okay to ask you.
College, like undergraduate. That's a tough question. It's like digging to my memories again. something geology related. I think it should be the field work in Palawan, Palawan province, specifically on the southern part. It's the most memorable one because it's the first time we had to plan ourselves, and at the same time, we had good time there. I remember we had to go to beaches. We also had to go to the, the city itself, I guess. So it's really yeah. I don't yeah. It's not just purely academic or field work, but there's also the vacation part because we're close to the beaches. It was really nice. I think that's the most memorable one and most relaxing at the same time.
That's awesome. So, I want from talking about like hydrogeology being the most one of the most important fields of geology, not only because of its social impact, but also because of how water itself is a necessity. Also, talking about your hobbies, your journey in Europe, and all of that. So, throughout the years of your experience, what are your uh, words of wisdom for a person who wants to pursue the field of geology?
When he or she wants to pursue geology in general, of course, the first thing he should do is to enjoy the moment because you have these field works, you have these activities outside because geology involves outdoor work. Every outdoor work, every day of outdoor work is really counts. And he or she should enjoy the moment outside because in geology, our laboratory is a world like the earth. So it's really important to enjoy the moment. And another thing is when you do not forget the people. I think it's not only you don't you don't talk to fellow geologists only. You have to learn to bring your science to the non-specialists as well. So it's not a common advice that I would give, but that people give, but I personally would like to give that advice already to students so that they science communication basically as early as possible while they're doing their studies. They also, the only way to know that you learn is fields is when you're able to communicate it. It's one way to see that you learned a lot when you're able to talk about it to non-specialists. So that's another thing. They should be able to do not be afraid to talk to other people, to talk about what they do, and to challenge them to tell the story of the earth, for example, to non-geology students, for example. But it's not a famous advice, I would say, but for me, it's important to develop as early as undergraduate or college or bachelor. Yeah. So another thing is, yeah, as I've said, that try to connect to the people. Do not make your community, like the geology community, isolated. Try to reach out to these people, especially that geology is a relevant field. Of course, you have these hazards, the people experience in daily life. It's not just groundwater, but it's not just about the hydrogeology, but even the hazards themselves, for example, earthquakes, yeah, those things. So I would tell the people, like the students, to try to connect to the people. At the same time, do not make their field or make their specialization an isolated community. No, they should be able to bridge it towards the non-specialists, to the common people, and so on.
Oh, that's a wonderful words of wisdom to leave the audience aspiring to learn more about geology. Well, there you have it, folks. Some words to live by from Sir Jayson Pinza. Thank you for giving us a wonderful experience, words of wisdom, lectures on groundwater, and your amazing experience in your European journey. So, for the audience, if you like this video, please like, comment your thoughts on the comment section below, and subscribe to the Magmatic Sage for more podcasts. Thank you, and that is it. See ya.